Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode of the Kianistan podcast. Joining us today, we have Myriam Charabaty from Beirut, Lebanon. Miriam is a political analyst and a writer, and her work focuses on Arab identity, the role of Christian Arabs, and also cultural and geopolitical struggles of the region. Miriam, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I look forward to this.
Yes, Miriam, thank you. Miriam, did I pronounce your surname right? Is it Charabaty?
Yes, it is. It's Charabaty. It's Myriam Charabaty. I know it's the most difficult part of the introduction usually.
Good. I can relate. People get my first name wrong all the time. Thank you for joining us again. Our previous regular guest, Vanessa Bealey, highly recommended you, and we've been trying to get you on for some time, but there's been there's been troubles mainly on our end, so sorry about that, and it's lovely to have you join us now.
It's my pleasure. I hope everything worked out on your end. I know Vanessa told me that this should be one of the very interesting talks that are gonna unfold, so I'm excited. I'm happy to be here. For me, these topics, right, they're essential, and I don't think they're being talked about enough. So I'm really glad to be here.
Exactly. Vanessa, I'm also happy to say you're the third consecutive Lebanese speaker we've had on this show now. So I'm really happy about that as well, because Lebanon is a very important country in the region, and it's a very complex country as well. So we have the opportunity to explore everything from different angles. So before we do get started, would you like to just maybe tell us a bit about yourself, your background?
Sure. So I'm Lebanese, born and raised. I'm not to be sectarian. I'm a Christian Lebanese. But to put it in the social context, I come from Mount Lebanon, which is, for anyone that doesn't know Lebanon, it's considered the heart of the country in the colonial sense, because the country is divided by kind of sectarian geolocations. Christian Maronites and Orthodox majority are generally known to be in Mount Lebanon and Syrian, which is halfway in the on the map. However, Christians in Lebanon do extend across all of the country. We have quite a large presence in Aqar, which is very north at the border with Syria. We have a large presence in the south, which is often labeled the Hezbollah stronghold, denying our existence for the most part. We are also present in the Baqa. Similarly to the south, it's denied. But we most commonly are known to be from Mount Lebanon, but this is a very political positioning. So when we speak from a Christian background, it is not to highlight one sect as superior to the other, but it's really to tackle the narrative that has been repeated over and over and over again in West Asia altogether, and in Lebanon specifically, about saving Christians and pinning that in the face of resistance and the public support the resistance has. So yeah, I think that's a good introduction.
Yeah, true. So how did you get into geopolitics and political writing and everything? Is there something you got from your family, or how did you develop that interest?
No, actually, I was never much into politics until later in my in my life. When I decided to join university, I did my first semester in philosophy. My initial plan was going into like musicology and music therapy, which is very far away from where I ended up. But questions emerged along the way, especially as an Arab in immigration. That's point one. Point two, as a Christian Arab in immigration, and the question of there are Christians in the Middle East, and then you realize that whether you're Christian or Muslim, for the West, you're Arab, right? And here, they have instilled in, especially within the Christian mentality, a sense of superiority above Arabs for being Christian. Like that gives you a certain superiority, and you fly out and you discover that this is delusional, particularly delusional. So that drove me towards certain questions about where do we belong, what's our identity, and how do we, in the face of all the ethnic cleansing that the region is facing, in each location by a different name or a different shape sometimes, how do we address that? And why are the numbers of Christians in the East diminishing when the entire West has been saving us for decades? Right? Why have we not been saved? Right? And that drove the question to where we are now. We're not saved, in fact.
Tell me about that. So I was wondering, I was curious about demographic changes over decades. So is the Christian population kind of thinning out, or is it stable? Because I know, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's kind of like roughly 30% Shias, 30% Sunnis, and about 30% Christians. Is that kind of a stable situation, or are things changing on the ground demographically?
In my humble opinion, that was pretty much the case in a survey they did somewhere, I think it's 1932 or 1935. And that was a bit of a political survey to kind of show a sense of equal division in the country, so that they can divide the power grab within the country based on sect, right? So it's institutionalization of the sectarian identity into the created nation state. However, on the ground, since then, we have not had any survey in Lebanon that shows that number. The likelihood that this number remains is, in my opinion, it's very low. The numbers of Christians have largely diminished. We're talking over eras. So we're talking Civil War 1975. A lot of Christians left. And most commonly, they left to Canada, Latin America, Brazil, Venezuela. Large numbers. And in Europe, to France. So you have that era of immigration. And then what came after it was a systemization of immigration, right? So at this point, every family in the country almost has at least one individual that lives abroad, right? But for the Christian community, this has been true for decades. And it's easier for Christians to immigrate than it is for Muslims to immigrate. And in that process, the number of Christians that live in the country diminished.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the pleasure of visiting Lebanon and traveling all over, and it was a wonderful experience. But still, it's a complicated country, so I don't want to assume anything. And I'm just wondering if you could help us, so what are the relations like between Shia, Sunnis, and Christians on a normal day-to-day basis? Because as you said, there's certain areas where there's more Shias, and then there's certain areas where there's more Sunnis. How do things kind of kick off from time to time? Because in the past we've had long periods of civil war, but now and also is religion a bigger divide, or is it class? Because I think I also saw a big class difference between different sections as well. So how do you see that?
Lebanon is divided by so many standards. The sense of sectarian divide it's common politically. It's less common on a social scale when there isn't geopolitical circumstances being pushed, right? So when we're talking, for example, when things are quiet, basically, in the region. So before the Syria war and after 2008, we had a couple of years of quiet, quote unquote. These were actually pretty quiet. Right there isn't even now with the peak mobilization and the kind of emotional drive to divide the people. If you go anywhere, you find Muslims and Christians in the same restaurants, in the same supermarkets, you find them everywhere. No one talks to anyone else. It's completely irrelevant until something political happens. It truly is completely irrelevant. It's difficult to explain. And then, something happens when someone tries to annoy someone else because they know what their political position is. Right? And it happens from both sides. And I think that's very normal in any country. Like, you see the same thing happening in central London. You see the same thing happen, just because it takes a different name.
Exactly.
It doesn't come off, kind of. But this is the nature of societies. They're bound to have social conflict. But there isn't anything in the sense that is being propagated, like persecution of Christians in South Lebanon. No, the only one persecuting us in South Lebanon is Israel. No, no Muslim persecuted a Christian town in South Lebanon. If that were the case, why do we still have churches with bells that ring and priests that pray there? We would have been displaced by now, because demographically we don't have the numbers to sustain. And militarily, they have a majority. So, it doesn't make sense. The narrative being propagated is so much more powerful, so much more aggressive than anything reality is.
Miriam, what's is it Orthodox? Is it kind of like, what kind of Christianity is practiced in Lebanon? Is it Greek Orthodox or?
Oh, wow. Everything almost is present in Lebanon. Okay. On the ruling scale, the president is a Christian Maronite.
We were talking about, I was just trying to get a good feel about the kind of equilibrium and the balance of power within Lebanon. And then maybe we can then talk about the regional, how it fits into regional politics. You were just telling me about what denomination of Christianity exists in Lebanon, and you were saying it's all different types.
Right. So we have, in the leadership of the Lebanese government hierarchy, we have Orthodox and Maronites.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So we have Orthodox and Maronite in the leadership.
Yep.
But aside from that, in terms of a country, we have, I think, most, if not all, churches, except for Christian Zionist churches, are present in the country. We do have evangelical churches, but not the particular Sons of Zion and, the very Christian Zionist churches. Evangelicals, Protestants in general, local Christians, like regional Eastern Christians, Ashur, Kaldan, Syriac, Arameans, really all smaller denomination of Christians are present in the country, to different extents, to different degrees, etc., etc. but they're all really present. Greek Orthodox, Christian Maronites are the most common amongst Christians, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. And when we talk about Zionism, so not, as we say, not all Zionists are Jews and not all Jews are Zionists. But similarly, I was actually very surprised to hear that there's Muslim Zionists as well. I just can't get my head around that. But we in the West, we see there's a lot of, especially maybe in America, there's a lot of Christian Zionists. Why do you think that is? Is it because there's a particular type of Christianity in America, or do you think somehow politics that was portrayed to them is a result of American government's long support for Israel, that kind of Zionism has crept in? How do you explain that?
No, I think it's part of the political project. Predominantly, we need to understand the region they're trying to break into and what blocked that infiltration in the early stages. Right. So when Israel occupied Palestine, the Nakba happened, and Israel was established as this barrier state for the Americans in the region that will ensure that no country in its vicinity, no people in its vicinity will be able to rise, develop, create, produce. We are all meant to remain a consumerist market, overexploited, underrated, right? That's the idea. As long as we serve, we're good. The moment we stop serving, or the moment the serving is no longer efficient, we're also doomed, right? That was the case in the West Bank. So at the time, initially, it was anticipated that the Jews clashed with the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews that are Arab. Right. So the initial version of understanding this conflict was the Arab-Israeli war. It was never a Palestinian-Israeli war. It was an Arab-Israeli war, and that was founded in a true position in the region, where even where Arabs were fighting each other, they rejected the Zionist entity in their midst. Right? That was essential. That was fundamental.
Yeah.
So the first point was to break that identity, unmake the unification of that Arab position. Right? And the unmaking of that position, part of it was to drive the Gulf towards certain positions that I think we all know today. And I think when you referenced Muslim Zionism, I think they would be a wonderful example of what Islamic Zionism looks like. That's on one end. But the other end was the Christians. The Christians of the region, especially in Al-Quds, in Syria, more predominantly than anywhere else, but also in Egypt, right, under Pope Shenouda, they took a very harsh position against Israel. In fact, even Vatican only normalized or acknowledged, recognized Israel later in the 90s. So now that has to do with something else, partially. But there is that Christian-Jewish issue, but there's also that Arab-Zionist issue, right? So the position of the Christians here was not anti-Jewish. It was anti-Zionist. And it was fundamentally anti-Zionist, especially when the early calls emerged for separating Christians from Muslims in the region by allowing Christians to visit Al-Quds and prohibiting Muslims from visiting Al-Quds, framing it as though Christians are not a threat because they're our friend and Muslims are the enemy. Wait, so that was a frame that was mostly a narrative, because on the ground, Christians were equally engaged in resistance as Muslims were. Now, demographically, the numbers differ, which is why we see less Christian engagement, but it's not a fundamentally ideological position. Okay. It has to do with the type of demographic. And that pushed Pope Shenouda to come out at one point and say,
that's really interesting.
We are that we are not visiting Al-Quds as long as our Muslim brothers are prohibited from visiting Al-Quds. And he prohibited Copts in Egypt from visiting Al-Quds. And that prohibition upholds until today. It was broken by certain clergy, but on a social level, it continues to uphold now, despite the normalization on a theological level. That's one thing. And so that drove also the Christians in Syria to take similar positions, right? And one of the most aggressive Christian position in the anti-Zionist movement was that of Archbishop Kabushi, right? And he's very commonly known to have been one of the people that is moving weapons to the resistance from Syria to Al-Quds. He used to hide them in his clerical tobs and his car, and otherwise he used to hide resistance fighters in the church. It was a moment to prove that this is not an excluded position, because if it were, then the church, the monks, the priests who are part of the church where he was positioned, or the monasteries where he was positioned, they would have thrown him out. They would have, excommunicated him or something of the sort. That never happened. While at some point, Christianity did go for the argument saying, we don't want armed resistance. We want an alternative version of resistance. That did not stop Christians from engaging in armed resistance, right? And during the first and second Intifada, several Christian martyrs ascended, and they were actually laid to rest near the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, with pictures that still bother the Israelis until today. So that was the general sense. Now, there is a sense of exclusion, definitely, with certain Christians, like the Maronites, who said, this is not our business, we don't want to get involved in this, etc., etc., even had connections with the Israelis. But that's also tied to a history of identity, which connected the Maronites in Mount Lebanon specifically, not the Maronites of Syria. It connected the Maronites of Mount Lebanon to the Crusaders in the early Crusades, right? Which gave them cover and recognized them at a time when they were actually being persecuted by the Byzantine Church. They were not being persecuted by the Muslims, as is often portrayed. It was the Byzantine Church they had an issue with, and it was a theological issue that kind of pinned churches against each other. Now that we understand this much, we see how there are so many layers that the Zionists needed to break through before they can get to isolate that Islamic resistance into a demonizing position, right? And they continue to do that today, despite the fact that Christians in Syria, and Syria as a whole, and I'm definitely talking about Syria before the fall of Damascus, not after the occupation of Damascus, because in my opinion, it's a full-blown occupation by Takfiri groups that only serve the Americans and the Zionists. So before the fall of Damascus, Syria was the hub of resistance, in the sense that all resistance movements were supported, funded, trained, given certain protections and accessibility in Syria. And the Christians of Syria were part of that, right? And they all of Syria paid a hefty price, particularly for that position, for refusing to forego the Arab identity of the Arab-Israeli war. So when we talk about Christian Zionism, it has existed for a long time. It emerged with the Scofield Bible, right? Which is some guy called Scofield, and he had notes on the Bible, and it became a recognized Bible for the Christian Zionists. Right? This is something we as Christians cannot accept. So if I take the Bible now and I write my commentary on it, right,
More
and a
about
group
that?
of people like, does that make yeah, basically this is what it is. It is.
Tell me more about Scofield. Where was he based and when was he around? And tell me a bit more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So basically, when we when we talk about the Scofield Bible, it's widely circulated and studied. I think it was annotated by Cyrus I in the U.S. But it's basically an English American Bible. It's completely unconnected to Eastern Christianity, right? And it's the book that annotates commentary on the Bible, and it comes initially from an evangelical perspective, which for the original churches is already problematic on a theological level, right? There's a huge schism between Orthodox Catholic Christianity, and then we're talking evangelicals within the Protestants, right? So the Scofield Reference Bible is basically, it contains texts from the King James version, right? Which is a Protestant version of the Bible, which is fine. But this guy's annotation eventually became central to the Christian Zionist movement. Basically, the annotation was to entrench Zionism as an aspect of Christianity. So to bring out how we can source Christian Bible into Zionism. All right. And it was, after that, it was just widely shared and kind of turned into this whole legitimate thing, which in fact doesn't have, in my opinion, any foundation.
That's so interesting. Yep. I've never heard of Scofield Bible. I'm going to go and study that a bit more in detail. Thanks for bringing that up. But also the scenario that you've painted, I think that's so interesting to know the Lebanese role in the resistance and how Zionism is not affecting just the Muslims, but just affecting all Arabs, whether whatever their religion is. Because being based here in the UK, I see a lot of very right-wing Christian organizations who are anti-Muslim, mainly because they don't want more immigration or whatever the reason may be. But because of all of that, they tend to align themselves more and more with Zionism and Israel. And I'm always baffled because there's Christians who are suffering deeply in Palestine, in Lebanon, but all over Arab countries. And I think it's really interesting what you're saying, and it's something that more people need to hear.
Yeah. So basically, one thing that is also interesting about the Scofield Bible, before getting into that other part, is that it came around late 1800s, early 1900s, right? So we are talking 1,800 years after Christianity, right? To 1,900 years after Christianity. And that push drove another fundamental question, which is, how do we understand the presence of Judaism in Christianity in the US versus in the East, right? Because in the East, we have a very different understanding of it. Primarily, we understand Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all owners of the land. We are not in a conflict about who owned the land, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing. On the other hand, there is the aspect of integrating a mentality of sectarian identity and ethnic identity, which is non-existent for our people before the division of the region and the breaking of the region at the last 100 years of the Ottoman Empire. So if we put that in context, we see why it was very important for the West to push narratives in the East, especially for Christian communities, to show them that they are superior to the Muslims that exist there. Right? Because that would create the divide needed to drive two options. Either the Christians leave the region, right? Or they become the excuse for the West to invade the region. Right? And this is precisely what we're seeing. That's on one end. The other end is, this is how they pinned the problem on the Muslims. Like, it's an Islamic issue. It's really not an Islamic issue. It was never an Islamic issue, and it will never be an Islamic issue.
Yes. Hello. Sorry, Miriam. I'm just wondering also. So, just looking at like this, the condition of Christianity in the wider Arab world. So Christianity has existed for centuries in that region and has survived so many turbulent times, and obviously plays a very important role in the makeup of the culture and society that we have today. But increasingly, it seems to be under siege from all directions, and it's very sad to see that Christianity seems to be kind of thinning out on a decline across different countries. So I'm just wondering, are there also like transnational organizations? Are there links between, say, Christians in Lebanon with Christians in Syria or Egypt? Are there like some movements like that kind of ensure that there's support for the people in the region?
Right. So first of all, in Christianity, the churches do not follow the borders of the international world today. Right? So, for example, here we have the Church of Antioch and all the East, and that would extend from parts of Turkey all the way around to Jordan, Egypt, Palestine, including Syria, Lebanon, right? So the churches themselves are not bound by the national identity of Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Jordan, etc. See, and that's another question of, when did Maronitism get connected to Lebanonization? Right? Because as a faith or as a church, we extend beyond Lebanon. Why the Lebanonization? Because we don't see that often anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right? Even in Palestine, we see the Orthodox Church as an Arab Orthodox Church. So understanding this positioning says that we are headed towards an existential crisis. Right? And that rang the bell somewhere in the 1920s. Otherwise, the connections exist within mostly church dynamics, which is one thing, but also on a socio-political dynamic. So you have, for example, Kairos Palestine, which is the document in Palestine that connects, that is closer to liberation theology, and that connects a group of Christians in the region. You have Sabil and Friends of Sabil, right? That would connect Christians here to Christians in the West, to diaspora Christians, and you have these movements. They do exist. But in my humble opinion, they're still below the threshold of existence to save Christianity from the existential threat we're in. Right? That existential threat puts all of us in a position to take a stance. We either say we will fight for our existence as much as any other Arab, or we will say, well, if the West can't give us a way to maintain our presence here, which, by the way, every time the West attempted to give us our presence here, we diminished in numbers greatly, right? Because the French defended the Christians of Lebanon, we diminished. The Americans defended the Christian of Iraq, they diminished. They set ISIS their way. The Americans defended the Christians of Al-Quds. And now in the West Bank, if you talk to any priest, they will tell you our churches are turning into museums. The number of churches has greatly, of churchgoers has greatly diminished. The number of Christians has greatly diminished. So the West has no intention of defending Christianity. At the best, they want us to immigrate or to disappear. Because that's the only way they can pin it as a full Islamic Judaic war. And the other option is to leave a small portion of us and use us as the minority card, right? We become absolutely useless to our own existence. So it's a threat to our own faith. It's a threat to our own identity. And it's a threat to the social fabric of this region. So it's...
I think you're so right. I think the existence of Christians and Yes, I think the existence of Christians and Christianity in the Middle East, in the West Asia, is a huge inconvenience to the West because it makes it difficult for them to justify what they're doing. Not that it stops them, but it makes it a bit embarrassing. So they try not to talk about it too much. Miriam, I'm also wondering, as a Lebanese Christian personally, but from the community's point of view, how do they see the relationships, for example, between Hezbollah and Iran? And is Hezbollah is there a tension? Because when Hezbollah and other organizations are resisting, that has an implication for the country as a whole. So is there some resentment towards Hezbollah, or is there generally an understanding of they're doing what's needed? As a Lebanese Christian, how do you personally, and maybe if you can speak for the greater community in Lebanon, how do you see the relationships, for example, between Hezbollah and Iran, or Hezbollah and Israel, and the resistance that Hezbollah and other organizations have towards Israeli Zionism and imperialism? Because the resistance inevitably has a backlash towards the whole country, and people will suffer as a result of that. So is there a support and understanding from the Christian community towards Hezbollah and Iran, or is there resentment? How do you see that?
So when we talk about the Christian community, I think it doesn't fit to talk about the Christian community as a lump.
It's difficult to talk about community as a whole. I understand. Yeah.
It isn't. It's not one like homogenous group. You have the political aspect on one end. You have people on the ground, and it depends on the region that we're talking about. Most Christians in the south have backed the resistance for decades. There are a couple of border towns that have historically been anti-resistance and pro-Israel. And I'm not talking just anti-resistance. I'm talking cold-blood pro-Israel. And these were the towns that, for a large part, remain with family ties to the Lebanese that were expelled. Sorry. To the Lebanese that were expelled after the liberation of South Lebanon. That's one thing. In general, in the Christian community, I think there's a decent divide between those that are pro-resistance and those that are anti-resistance, and those that are neither pro nor anti. They trust and they believe.
Yes.
They trust and they believe that the resistance is the only thing protecting them, even if they disagree with armed resistance from the perspective
of ethics.
with perspective of how and the fact that it's Islamic or the fear from the whole Islamic experience, etc., etc. I can note that there is, especially since 2023, there is a huge change in the Christian position towards the Islamic resistance. Very large shift occurred from people who used to say, the Israelis won't do to us what they did to Palestinians, to, okay, these people might be genocidal, right? And that position drove a lot of people towards the saying that, no, alhamdulillah, we have the resistance. They will protect us, because everybody in the country, everybody, there's no one that's confused about the fact that the Lebanese military is incapable of defending the country. That's it. Anyone who tells you there's someone who believes the military can is lying to you. No one believes the military can. Yeah. Now, their argument of putting a defense kind of agreement or a paper to unify the position, that's something the resistance never disagreed with. In fact, they called for it. But a real defense project for the country begins with rejecting U.S. and Israeli diktats. And until now, a lot of the actions don't show that. So it's unlikely that we head in that direction anytime soon. Yeah.
So true. Miriam, also I'm wondering, I'm going to put you in a bit of difficult situation once again. Obviously, as it's difficult to speak for Christian community as a whole, because it's not a homogeneous kind of an entity, as you say. Similarly, obviously, with the Sunnis, but I wanted to ask you, how are the Sunnis in Lebanon viewing what's happening in Syria? Are they fearful? Are they worried? Or are they thinking this is great and we want some of this?
In the beginning, we saw a greater drive amongst the Sunnis towards what is happening in Syria. But today, because there was this whole, Bashar was killing the Sunnis, kind of narrative being thrown and down. And there was this whole Sunni mobilization in that direction. But when Abu Muhammad al-Julani took over, a lot of people held back. A lot of them still wanted or praised or were excited about that. But over time, and today, the support for al-Julani in Lebanon diminished radically, to the extent that even the highest Sunni clerics no longer openly praise him, per se. It's more of diplomatic, positive engagement, but there isn't that, we want to join the Syrian state, right? Because that was initially an idea, let's now extend Syria and turn Lebanon into this Islamic Sunni ruling as well, etc., etc. So there isn't much excitement about Syria anymore in Lebanon. That does not mean that there aren't Sunnis that back al-Julani in Lebanon. There are. The Takfiris are Takfiris anywhere in the world. They stand for the same thing. If they're Turkish-backed, they're Turkish-backed. But on a general scale, the Sunni populace in general in Lebanon, especially from Beirut southward, is more leaning towards resistance positions. So the position of Al-Qassam, the position of Hezbollah, the position of Iran, the position of these groups, regardless of the political disagreements and kind of conversations that they might have, on a practical, pragmatic level, they are closer to that positioning than they are to the al-Julani position.
Interesting. How do you actually see, from where you are, what's going on in Syria? Do you think Julani has grass level support enough to sustain him? Or do you think a lot of the support is either coming from Turkey and America and all of that, or from foreign fighters. And on action grassroots, the support is not as much as he would need to sustain himself. How do you see what's happening in Syria? Do you think this is going to be a kind of a small chapter in the bigger story of Syria, or do you think we might have a prolonged period of Gilani?
Understanding Syria is understanding the region, really. There is no way that we have a prolonged era of Gilani. That's not an option. Primarily because Gilani could not consolidate power amongst the mercenary groups that exist, or the Takfiri groups that exist in Syria that are foreign-backed. That's to begin with. And he definitely does not have a grassroots support movement. In terms of, does he have the backing of some of the Sunnis in Syria? Yes, he does have the backing of some of the Sunnis in Syria, but that did not come from a political backing. That came from a gains-based backing. So when you drop something on a bunch of people look for a way to survive, right? The Sunnis had a way to survive. Integrate into that system, and you will be able to survive. Now, let's be clear, a lot of the Sunnis rejected that. A lot of the Sunnis said, we don't want to integrate into that system. And some of them were even martyred alongside Alawites, alongside Christians, Shias, and the coast with the Druze, and in Homs, or in the suburbs of Damascus. Now we see more and more Sunnis coming out and saying, what the hell is this? Especially the traders. And Syria is known for big trader families. And that comes to say that, okay, so even the gains are no longer sufficient for the people to survive, which means it's not sufficient for the mercenaries to survive for long. And the mercenary is a mercenary. If you can buy them, you can sell them, someone else can buy them, right? This is an open option. So what we're looking at in Syria is chaos, and manufactured and managed chaos. But it is my humble opinion that historically in Syria, the resistance always emerges at point zero. And the Arab identity, the unified Arab identity, has never been able to be occupied for long periods of time in Syria. They lived under the French mandate not long enough, and they came out mostly unscathed in terms of identity, opposite to Lebanon, for example. So in that sense, I think the region altogether is in an existential crisis. Syria is part of that region. So we are in the face of two projects, liberation and subjugation to imperialism. So Syria fits within that framework of understanding, which means that if the resistance goes on the offensive, then Syria will be part of that. And if the resistance takes a hit, Syria will be part of that. And Syria was one of the fronts that were being fought, right? And it's the oldest front in terms of direct confrontation after Palestine. After Palestine, which is one continuous front because it never went quiet. Syria is the other front that remained continuously in a state of perpetual war, partially economically, and then in a manufactured proxy warfare on Syria, and then another economic warfare program, and that resulted in the fall of Damascus. So it's paying the price for that same existential war we're in. So it fits into that greater move. I do think the resistance is working on something. How Syria fits into that is, I believe, a question we will only get answers for on the battlefield. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I have so much hope and love for Syria that I just hope that soon we can get past this period and get to some kind of a stability where the Syrian people, their voices can be heard and they can have peace that they deserve. Miriam, how do you see what's happening in Palestine and this kind of peace or international force that they're trying to create to stabilize things, how do you see that succeeding?
It's not succeed. There is nothing of the sort is gonna happen, in my opinion. Because if they learned anything from the past, from Lebanon, really, it's that foreign power on a land in which the resistance is not defeated means another Marines tragedy for them. And Al-Qassam and the PIK and all of these resistance movements in Gaza, including the Al-Aqsa, the Al-Aqsa brigades, right? All of them, they have not been defeated in Gaza. And until today, Israel has besieged Rafah for how long? 2 months? We're entering the 3rd month. And an operation targeting their soldiers occurred in literally in a line of land that they have besieged, and they forced them into starvation after 2 years of a whole starvation campaign, and they still can't contain that whatever few kilometers they're present in. How are they gonna have a foreign force? And what foreign force is gonna bring in its soldiers? And what soldier is gonna come in? Anyone who comes in is a mercenary. Soldiers are not coming in on the...
You're so right. You're so right. I just don't understand what if these countries are going ahead just because they want to please Trump. I think they're going to be sending their soldiers in a mess that they cannot handle and they cannot sort out. It's not a peacekeeping force when there is no peace to keep, and they can't enforce peace. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Miriam, lastly, how do you see regional realignments that are going on? Obviously, we had the much welcomed rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia that was kind of helped through by China. But since then, we've also had the attack on Qatar from Israel. And also subsequently, we had the defense pact between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. And I know recently in Pakistan, we had the chief of armed forces or defense forces from Saudi Arabia. We had many high-level diplomats from Iran. We had diplomats from Turkey. I do think something is brewing where some countries are coming closer together. How do you see that?
In my humble opinion, there is no way to convince a client state to turn against its master. It's fundamentally bound to it. However, what Iran is doing, what they are doing, has more to do with Saudi Arabia trying to find a future for itself in the face of the option that what if the US fails in the region? And it's more from that perspective than it is from the perspective of, oh, Saudi is changing its mind. Saudi doesn't change its mind. When Salman might be looking for a way out in the event of something happening, Iran wouldn't mind per se, because at the end of the day, what Iran looks for in that context are 2 main things. First, to diminish the possibility of Muslim-Muslim confrontations, right, amongst Islamic countries. That's one thing, and that's bound by an ideological framework. And the other thing is Iran has the understanding that anything you do will have a long-term impact. So a war between Persia and the Arabs, right, from that identity, not from a Muslim country, from a Persian and an Arab, will mean the restarting of that version of confrontations for years to come, right? So they're not interested in that. They don't want that.
Exactly.
That's one. And the other thing is understanding that anything within the framework of a civil war, so something between a group of people and another group of people on a societal level, any small confrontation in that sense will result in years of hatred, in years of kind of failing each other's plans, in years of even possibly conflict, right? And so there is no interest for a group that is looking to build or be part of an Arab and an Islamic world, because you have the Arab world, that's one thing, and that Arab world is part of the greater Islamic world, and Iran is part of the Islamic world, and Persia has been historically tied to the Arab world through trade, through culture, through religion, through etc. And so in that understanding, the rise of the Arab world is beneficial for the Islamic world. And there is no reason for Iran to say, I don't want to have a talk with you because you are client states. No, they will not compromise anything, but they will talk to them. Because at the end of the day, Iran does not talk to Mohammed bin Salman. They talk to Saudi Arabia, and they frame it as such. They never frame it as talking to the kingdom or the king of the kingdom, but to the Arabs, to the Gulf, right? And so I think that's necessary. Also, Saudi Arabia has a good number of Shias that are followers of Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Yeah. So there are concerns on that end, as well as the religious aspect of the Hajj and whatnot. That has always been part of the conversation. So yeah, and in terms of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, there are two clients. So it's not going to be much in a practical sense. And what's Pakistan when a nuclear bomb Israel? Like, this is not going to happen. So it's really more of a performative diplomacy rather than anything practical.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I've taken a lot of your time. I would like to have another chat with you one day to talk about Pakistan and Iran, because another 12-day war that happened between Israel and Iran in June. Just a month before that, we had a 4-day war between Pakistan and India. And in that war, India, the one country that supported India was Israel. And in the 12-day war, Iranian diplomats came out and said that the country that supported us the most was Pakistan. And they actually came out in erupted in chants of "Thank you, Pakistan" in the Iranian parliament. And since then, there's been a huge amount of activity going on between Pakistan and Iran. At the time, I even remember the Pakistani army chief, just a few days before the war started, was in America. And we thought, oh my God, this is going to be pressure put on Pakistan not to support Iran. But the Pakistani defense minister came out and said that there's no way we can leave Iran alone to face this Zionist aggression, because we have a border, we share religion, but linguistically, we've had a long time when we spoke Persian ourselves. So there's no way we would leave Iran alone. So I think there is a lot going on, and maybe we can have this conversation in another episode. But I do so thank you for your time today. There's been a lot of technical problems, and I really am grateful that you kind of pushed through. I hope the audience will listen to and learn from this episode, and we'll try to make it as audible, as smooth as possible with editing and everything. But thank you for your time. And if people want to follow your work, how can they find you?
I'm mostly on Substack or Twitter. Feel free to reach out on Substack or Twitter. Use my name. You should be able to find me on both. Otherwise, yeah, definitely. I look forward to talking more about the extended region. But like this region, India, Pakistan, Kashmir, the division amongst them is also a manufactured one. And to a large degree, they are not homogeneous groups. But that's one aspect of it. But thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Sorry for the technical difficulties on all ends. And I look forward to talking again.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, I love that conversation. And yeah, there's so much more to talk about. So inshallah, we'll have you back soon. Thank you so much, Miriam.
To it. Thank you.
Hey there. I hope you're enjoying this episode. Let me just take a moment to introduce our sponsors for today. This episode is kindly being sponsored by the Worldwide Listings Company Limited, or WLC for short. WLC is a complete A to Z Amazon account management service. So if you're looking to start an e-commerce business, or you already have a business that you want to take to the next level, then get in touch and WLC will be able to help. Just for transparency purposes, let me also mention that WLC is a company that I personally created and am a director of. So when you get in touch with WLC, you will be speaking with directly myself or my team, and we very much look forward to speaking with you to see how we can serve your needs. Thank you, and with that said, let's get back to the episode.